Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to this conversation on collaborations across countries for startups. We have a very diverse and interesting panel who are well versed with this idea of collaboration. Hopefully we will all pick up something interesting to take forward. My name is Manjunatha. I am from Infosys. My essential role is to work on emerging technologies and incubate new technology solutions for our clients. We do this both organically through what we do as research and incubation, and we also bring in collaboration with startups and startup innovations to our solutions. In today's context, the primary idea is to understand what is the role of collaboration across geographies and across organizational entities, and how does it drive the next generation of innovation. I mean, civilizations, cities, countries, kingdoms have all evolved through centuries and millennia through this exchange of ideas, exchange of information, and exchange of capabilities around the world. I mean, I don't think there's been any civilization left untouched through this exchange of new ideas, which has actually added to each other's development. And I guess it is very ingrained in the human psyche to be able to work with multiple other organizations and entities to evolve their new ideas. But it has to be purposeful and it has to be driven to be effective and to be scaled. Otherwise, we are unlikely to see the kind of outcomes that we desire. So let us then see, particularly in the technology world, today, digital technologies, the kind of ideas that come up and distribution is almost instantaneous. Something happens in Silicon Valley or somewhere in Europe, it's kind of available everywhere in the world today, overnight. But I believe there is a lot more for organizations to be able to tap into these ideas and translate those connections to reality for solving different problems, the problems of this country, problems of other countries, etc. So let us hear from our panel. What do they think from their experience? A few nuggets of insight that may help each of you as startups and participants of startups to leverage this collaboration. Yeah. So maybe we'll start with our lady luck. Yeah. So Swetha, one is obviously please introduce yourself and help us understand, when you are looking at this whole collaboration with startups and with different agencies in different countries, how do you measure and what is a good objective to chase when you're looking at these kind of collaborations?
Sure. Thank you so much, Manju. I'm Swetha and I represent Swissnex in India, the Consulate General of Switzerland, based in Bangalore. And our remit
Maybe
is
you have to keep it a little closer.
Okay. Yeah. So our remit is actually to work from fostering, let's say, R&D collaborations till innovation, something that we consider to be early stages of a startup, because that's where the maximum hand-holding has an impact. And in the context of this, I will try and answer, Manju, your question. So let's think of, when we say R&D collaborations, usually you're all thinking of, let's say, university ties, right? Or industry university, exchange of students, all that is fine. But apart from those, one way that we actually also do is very purpose-led. So we try and pick up topics, for example, that are of immense interest to both Switzerland and India. What is the shared fabric? And what are these topics that both the countries are actually investing in for impact beyond borders? So I can give you two examples of this and then tell you how is it that we measure success in that. So one, for example, we picked up in India, now you might have heard of One Health, right? And a key component of this is actually antimicrobial resistance that not many actually talk about. Switzerland also recognizes this to be a big threat to humanity per se. So few of the things that we've done is to create a dialogue around AMR, wherein we had 25 different delegates from Switzerland that are ranging from researchers to, let's say, pharmaceutical companies, as well as in India, also representing researchers, companies, insurances, etc., to bring all these stakeholders on a common platform in order to accelerate whether it's development of new antimicrobials, whether it is to understand the economic impact of this, whether it is to also cross collaborate in a manner so that the R&D efforts are not going in vain, they are actually channeled in the right direction, thinking of the ultimate, which is the hospital, how would they use it, thinking of insurers, thinking how would they actually reimburse it, so that you can fast track this. So if we have to measure success of these, it would actually be what kind of new collaborations are being formed. And in order to actuate that, the next call, the Indo-Swiss call for R&D that will actually open up, ISJRP it's called, this year, the topic will focus on One Health, right? So that actually provides like a tangible way for those that wanted to collaborate now to go ahead and do so. Now the second part is also about diversity. Both Switzerland and India are championing diversity in the countries. So for example, we are looking at it in a programmatic manner, right? Wherein we put, let's say, some effort of it into that. So something that we did was called as Winspiration, which is actually how is it that women could actually, let's say, manage ambitions along with the perimenopause and the menopausal stage. And we collaborated with Invest India, Tech for Eva to actually try and figure out how is it that we could accelerate innovations that are addressing these health and hygiene of women. So now an outcome of that, for example, is that one of these startups that was working out of a university in Switzerland is quite interested to now bring the not just bring the technology to India, but also make use of the Make in India opportunity to indigenize it, so that it's not something that's limited to a certain geography. The impact can be across. Right now, while these might be more purpose driven, we also have some things that are more commercial or economic driven, wherein in February we are focusing on health tech. In June we will focus on space tech. So there we are looking at delegations of startups that would come, and each of them have specific asks or needs for collaboration. Sometimes it is to do with manufacturing partners that one would need. Sometimes it is to do with the access part of it. So in those cases, the measure of success would be how well or how much time have we saved, or only if there is a product market fit is something that the company should actually come here, only if there is a certain capacity for the collaborator, and they also have their ambition served by going to the other side. That is how we measure success. So it's very context driven. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought you will take everybody's time now, but the most important two nuggets, if we were to capture, is if you are into healthcare, and if you are looking at space tech, and if you're interested in the Swiss Alps, then talk to Swetha. Yeah. So any startup in India looking at these topics, I think should please go reach out to her. Yeah. Okay. Now that she spoke about healthcare, I just realized we need some exercise of our neck as well. So we'll move this side, and then maybe to the other end. So Tarun,
Sure.
he's the director of the New Jersey group, and he comes with a very different perspective, and hence we want to go here. What Tarun has to say, as to here you heard about governments and you heard about universities or agencies trying to promote and contribute to innovation and startups. But from Tarun, we would like to understand what is the role of diaspora, given that we have such a huge presence all around the world, and they play such a significant role, particularly Indian diaspora, in governments, in universities, with companies, with startups. How have you seen it work, and what would you advise for, let us say, startups here to say, hey, what, if you were to do maybe 1 to 3, you could potentially leverage this diaspora for yourself.
No, thanks, Manjunatha. My name is Tarun. I lead the New Jersey India Center. I liked your statement initially. Civilizations have grown through collaboration. And I see a certain gentleman, Edison, mentioned there, right? So Edison's first incandescent lamp was invented in New Jersey. The first motion picture was in New Jersey. And Swetha's comment on purposeful, we are all seeing the impact of that collaboration. Now coming to diaspora, it's an easy job because I'm representing New Jersey. If you look at the US landscape, 1% of the population is about Indian diaspora, about 3.5 million, yeah? You look at New Jersey, 5% of that population is Indian diaspora, okay? Before I talk to work, I'll talk something which is very close to my stomach. I am from Delhi. The best chola bhatura is in Delhi, right? By far. And the second best in the world is in New Jersey, okay? So that's on the most important. Then let's come to the 3 points I'll cover, Manjunatha, of the diaspora impact. First is education and employment. That's been our journey into the US, education and employment. So if you look at the US households, 80% of Indian diaspora households, 80% have a bachelor's degree as compared to 1/3 in case of an average American household. But dig deeper, nearly 50% of Indian diaspora household has a graduate or a professional degree as compared to 13%, 15%. Yeah. And this year, India has overtaken China as the largest number of Indian students in the United States. There are close to 270,000 students studying, Indian students studying in the US. And why it is relevant for New Jersey is because New Jersey has the best public schooling system K to 12. The number one university in the US, Princeton. The second public university, New Jersey Institute of Technology. In fact, if you go to a school in New Jersey, you will see a lot of Indian names, Gopal Swami, Agarwal, Joshi. So you see the strength of our diaspora leveraging that education. On employment, there's a very nice report which came out called Indian Roots, American Soil by the CII. New Jersey has been amongst the top 3 states where Indian firms have created jobs. Infosys is amongst them. But why it is important is now the next wave is amongst the startups. And so in employment, Indian companies are creating jobs. And the second part is, which has an impact, is on remittances. This year, United States has become the number 1 country where we have remittances coming into India. And that is again providing pools of capital and also access. And the last point is, finally, we are also leveraging our diaspora on the Indo-US Strategic Forum. In fact, the largest caucus on Capitol Hill is the India Caucus, which is also known as the Samosa Caucus. And we are seeing this impact even at a state level, where coincidentally, the head of Choose New Jersey is of Indian diaspora. With that, I'll take a pause, but happy to engage in discussions.
No, thank you, Tarun. I think if Tarun is given a choice, he will make Samosa Caucus too, Chola Bhatura Caucus. Yeah? But yes, food is great here. I'm enjoying the food as I come from Bangalore and I love North Indian food. So thank you, Tarun. I think, we are also very deeply connected people. We usually find familiarity to work with other familiar people. And we do find ways to discover, engaging and helping each other. I think I have personally felt it, and I'm sure each of you, if you're looking at working with these startups, you should obviously looking to go to New Jersey. Now you know where to go to. Yeah? Okay. No, thanks, Tarun.
Thank you, Manjunatha.
Now, obviously, I'm sure all of you would have noticed that, we have somebody out of place. So, Greg, thanks for coming to India, being an Indian almost now. Yes. Yeah. And I'm hoping that I'm sure, you'll be looking at this India, the market, the people, and the work, innovation, technology, everything from a different lens, from, whatever we have been, thinking or looking at. So, what do you want to share in terms of how you see organizations or working across these countries and states that you have been working is helping people to innovate or can learn something for each of them to pick up and look at.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Matney, and I work with Cherise Global. I oversee the global business development for the company and work alongside the CEO and founder, Parimal Shah. My role is essentially to take our smart vending solutions of coffees and teas outside of India. So I actually live here. My wife is Indian. My children were born here. I've been here for 7 years. So my wife often says I'm more Indian than American now. So I think my vantage point is a little different. I'm not a policy person or a government person, so I'll share maybe a few insights from my perspective that may help startups and SMEs build relationships with foreign governments, with foreign entities, with foreign funding. And I can share a little bit about my experience, which may help you see my main point, which is that it's truly at the personal human connection level that partnerships are formed. So it's about finding the right ways to find that human connection. And you have a lot of people on this stage who would love to connect you to foreign entities if you put that intentionality into the relationship. But it has to start from you, because they're all busy and they don't know where to find you, but you can find them. And so if you're a little bit intentional with reaching out to the government of Switzerland or Austria or New Jersey, they will be intentional about connecting you to opportunities there. But the intention comes from you. From everybody that's come to our booth, I've had probably a dozen people say, oh, I'd love to start putting a Cherise vending machine in Saudi Arabia or Argentina or Chile. And I said, I will work with you if you're intentional about reaching back out to me. I see an opportunity there. So the onus is on the startup. The onus is on the SME to be intentional. For myself, I was able to build a human connection with the CEO, Parimal Shah, through his investor. Is a friend of mine. Our kids go to school at Kodaikanal International School together. And through that connection of a shared human relationship, we were able to build a bond where he saw that I could add value to this company, and this company and I would be a good fit. So my piece of encouragement for you is that everybody wants to be in India. India is a really exciting party to be in, but nobody knows how to get in. So if they don't have a connection with Indian people, if they don't have the personal human relationship, it's still scary. So you need to hold their hand. And a lot of people up here are hand holders, facilitators of those relationships. Trust is still low, unfortunately, but trust is growing. So we're all trying to create ways to build trust with foreign entities. I think the Indian diaspora is probably the best way to build trust. I can say that whenever I share with people that my wife is Indian, my children are Indian, I get a hug. I'm in your family.
Yeah.
And so that means a lot. And I say it jokingly, but it's very, very true. I met with an investor yesterday at the investor meetup, and we had 3 minutes and then a bell rang. Okay. And we had to go from one spot to the next. It was a very kind of cold feel. But when I started speaking with him, I found out that my wife's grandfather and his grandfather were friends almost 100 years ago.
Oh my God.
And now we've had our third meeting in 48 hours of ways that we can partner together. And we spoke yesterday about getting our machines into 6,000 of the 7,000 train stations through a connection that he brought to us yesterday.
Brilliant.
So all that to say is that if you take intention and you seek out the handholders, the facilitators, you will be successful in building global partnerships. You can't immediately ask for something. You have to see a shared interest. You have to see a shared value, and it may be a slow game of building a relationship. But I would say that if people don't think you're in it for a quick dollar, but you're in it for a long-term relationship, you can really build some significant inroads in the global community.
Oh, thank you, Greg, for that interesting insight. So I believe, like my wife keeps on telling me this, you should always think the world is conspiring to make you successful. So I think that's what Greg is saying. Everybody is here, everybody wants India, everybody wants Indian talent, Indian technology, they want to work. It's just that, we need to take that first step, and then every one of us will be able to, help transform.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you, Greg. And so I also then, want to see if governments and organizations do they have specific programs, specific ideas and policies to help such collaboration going? So we have Ajay, who is kind of representing the Austrian government or their embassy. And do you want to share what are some interesting programs or ideas that you have seen work with multiple, companies or countries? And you have a few thoughts on what we can pick up.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Manjunatha. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ajay Singh and I am representing Advantage Austria, which is the Austrian Embassy's commercial section, or in simple words, Austrian Foreign Trade. What my particular role here is to help and support startups. We do support Indian startup as long as we see a lot of innovativeness or the appetite for international growth. So we do have a lot of program. Before that, I would like to share in last 2 years what we did with this startup collaboration between India and Austria. We had 4 startup delegation from India to Austria, and they were all over India. We had a startup delegation from Karnataka. We had a startup delegation from Kerala also. We had a startup delegation New Delhi. And in these startup delegation, we had wonderful entrepreneurs coming from India, and we gave them a roadshow all over Austria. We had a very good success story. Now 5 companies from India, they are established themselves in Austria. Austria is looking at innovativeness. Austria is looking at sustainability. Austria is looking at new technologies. But also at the same time, we are supporting startups who are coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities from India. We are supporting startups to help and launch and support them in Vienna, in Austria. And Austria, when you are in Austria, you're not limited to just one country. When you are in Austria, you are in Europe. So we give access to India, to European market. I think that is more comparable, being the size of the nation. So I always compare India with Europe. So when you are in Austria, you are in Europe. In these 4 startup delegations, they were hosted by our offices, also by the Indian Embassy. So this is a initiative what we want to promote. We want to have more collaboration. Some major events in Austria are also Vienna Up, and you should definitely Google Vienna Startup Package. This is for the international founders, especially from the Indian founders. If you get selected, you get free flights, accommodation, 1 month of office space in Austria. So you don't have to spend anything. You can actually test your product in Austria. And also the second incubator network, which is Global Incubator Network Austria. You can apply already for the call for products is open. You can apply that. And when you are selected, you will be supported by the Austrian government, and also from the financial obligation, you don't have any. We cover all the cost and everything. Looking at the success story, so on your left-hand side, I see Kerala Startup Mission. This was our 3rd startup delegation to Austria. We had a wonderful time with Kerala Startup Mission with Austria, and they were supported by us. So we are actually looking forward for supporting more startup delegations, supporting more incubator accelerator network to Austria. And we are also asking you to come to Vienna with this startup package or one of our delegation. And going forward, one more initiative I would like to share is India-Austria Startup Bridge, which we are going to launch very soon with Startup India. So under that bridge, we are also looking at this collaboration.
Thank you, Ajay. What you essentially get is that, like Greg was saying, there are many programs, many initiatives that each of the countries are putting in place to attract our talent and our skills. So obviously, you need to take that first step and make use of those opportunities. Yeah. So thanks, Ajay.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, all of these interesting opportunities finally will have to translate into some sort of money flowing for everybody. And the man with the money bag is our Pranav Sanghvi. And he can share, or I would request him to share, where do you see the flow of funds coming from across geographies? On what kind of topics, initiatives are people interested in investing, for the set of startups in the next coming days and quarters?
Sure. First of all, if I keep my answers very concise, please blame Delhi winters for this, right? I'm not trying to save time. Okay, on a more serious note, great question, right? And, as a fund that is in its second fund, as a fund house that we're in our second fund, right? We've come to realize that there is a lot of capital, both institutional and retail, flowing into India, right? And this is across the country, some of which, our esteemed panel members are a part of as well. I think this points towards one fact that this is going to become the technology center of the world, right? And hence you see a lot of capital flowing in. Why it's flowing in, I'm going to restrict these answers to sectors that we look at as Merak. In insurance, for example, we look very actively at InsurTech. For InsurTech, what we've seen is that, there is capital because, of course, insurance in India is highly underpenetrated, right? So that in itself creates a massive opportunity. I think, if you're a reasonably good founder building for insurance in India, that is a massive opportunity. You're already at like level 2 automatically just as a function of the space you're operating in. Another sector that we look at is SaaS, right? For SaaS as a horizontal, I think it's very important to understand that the money comes in exchange for, let's say, sales, business expansion, product expansion, and hence revenue expansion opportunities, right? And I think the West sees this very clearly, that we're ready to put in some amount of capital in exchange for, let's say, the potential to expand sales beyond borders, right? This leads to sort of good bargaining power for global money that comes in, and hence SaaS becomes lucrative for global investors, right? Creator economy, I think, of course, India, just as a function of the population, has a categorically higher number of creators, right? And hence the space becomes interesting. And for climate and sustainability, I think India is a good testing ground as well, right? We're sitting in the center of it all.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see the emergence of great climate businesses in India. I think true potential is yet to be realized, but it's because they're closest to the problem, right? And hence the urgency to build great quality climate solutions emerges from there. I think these are a few factors that contribute towards why abundant capital is flowing into India.
No, I think that's very good to hear, and I'm sure it must be heartwarming for everybody that there is significant amount of fund flow. But I just want a small extension on that, Pranav. You spoke about Indian startups or Indian technologies being close to the problem, but if you take an insurtech as a space, the insurance problems of an West are slightly different, and particularly a B2B kind of a scenario versus an insurance problems in India. Like let us say it's here, it's penetration. There maybe it is cost or efficiency or whatever. So how do you see Indian startups trying to solve Indian problems and making it global versus Indian startups trying to solve global problems and making it Indian?
Sure. So insurance particularly, I think, is a space where every country works completely differently, right? But what you can, what inspiration you can draw from different countries is regulatory challenges that they faced earlier. So let's say, for example, the US, right? The US is a far more mature insurtech market than India, which means they've seen a lot of regulatory hurdles being overcome. And that, I think, is a very good benchmark for Indian businesses. So my point is, it's actually not only the capital that you can draw from these countries, it's a lot of learnings from the fact that they are a way more mature market that these businesses draw, right? So in short, I think, regulatory, barriers are the single largest thing people can learn out of how they've been overcome in the West.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, Swetha. So, I think all of these are a little bit harder aspects of collaboration, partnership, etc. Obviously, we heard a little bit from Greg about developing personal relationships and connects. But it is also true that you're trying to deal with different worlds of sorts, culturally, economically, perspective of the world, everything is different. And as an Indian startup youngster who is trying to develop some solution for a different world, how do we connect and understand these softer elements of this collaboration? And given that you work with many such countries and many such people, a few sets of advice that we can take up.
No, I think it's like what you see when an iceberg is floating in the sea is all this economic, commercial, the tech match, etc. And actually, the softer aspects, which are
True.
6 on 7 of it, are under the water. So that's the kind of importance that it has. And I would say, for example, just taking, the sector that our colleague here mentioned, InsurTech. So one would think India underpenetrated insurance market, Switzerland over-insured market actually. And even if you come to these together, would there be any learning? Is there any collaboration, inspiration that's possible? And I can tell you from experience that that's very much the case, because for example, some of the innovations that you would apply here in order to get your people to access there, you could tweak it to a different product market fit in order to deploy it very differently. So it becomes very important first to understand the context of each of the countries. While internationalization, I'll just answer this also in the context of that, there are so many countries, so much support and everything that's available. One has to also think why you are collaborating with a certain country. How is it that you want to collaborate? Now it's actually a global playing field, right? India is also entering into free trade agreements with different countries, including, for example, with Switzerland. Now, if you look at Switzerland and if it's a consumer startup, is there a point? There is lesser population in the entire country than there is in Bangalore itself, right? So at the same time, for technology access, for R&D collaborations, especially in the fields of robotics, for example, computer vision, for example. So those are the reasons why one would actually go there, versus, let's say, for financial markets, then you are actually looking at a lot more very different set of countries. So I think those are also the kind of not culture. So that's like the business part of it, or the contextualization part of it, that is super important. And the second part is also business culture, right?
Yeah.
As Indians, one would find it very hard to say no, while as
Yeah.
European, I think also as American, there is nothing rude about it, right? But you say, hey, this is not what I do, this is not interesting, you actually shrunk down on the time and you moved on. So
Yeah.
I think also to understand, I mean, this is something that probably everyone knows, but for each country there are these specific things. So for example, Switzerland innovators, not very risk taking as the Indians are, or Americans are probably the most risk taking.
Yeah.
But there is that index. So that means in order to generate confidence, in order to build trust, so they will first think about everything before making that step. And
Yep.
it's very important for the other person to understand this. While in another one, hey, the opportunity is in the next few months, we have to do it. So that is also the attitude for certain countries. So all of these things are what really makes a large difference.
Thank you. And hopefully, all of these kind of many programs that you have, like Ajay was talking about, traveling, being there, being part of their incubators, working with different startups and their companies in these regions, should kind of give that sense of the local culture experience that you would want to take up. Yeah. Okay. So I have been handed a chit warning me to finish this session. And I think they took away 15 minutes of this panel. Maybe any questions. We wanted to make sure you have an opportunity to ask. Do we have any question from the audience? Maybe I should have planted one before. No? Okay. So obviously you can always reach out to us post this panel and discuss as well. But just as a kind of a parting thought, I mean, coming from a technology company, you cannot walk away without talking about technology. So anybody in our panel, I just want to check, where do you see the role of technology itself in building such partnerships of global significance, which kind of connects both the hardware and software elements. Today all that we know is okay, Zoom meeting connects you. I mean, do you see technology playing a role in expanding these human connections, you know, across these geographies, or have you been thinking or doing anything about it?
Yeah, I think it gets you a seat at the table, right? Whether you are a startup, whether you are a very large company, now I think technology is essentially leveling the playing field. So, for example, most recently we did a roundtable at the WEF, right? And one would imagine that only the larger corporates, the very influential people are the ones that are coming in, but but startups are the ones that are disrupting, right? So
Sure.
they also have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So I think that's how the way forward is, and that's how technology really helps disrupt, get you a seat at the table, build inclusivity. Yeah.
Start with technology. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I'll just add a few things, and that's more from a personal and looking at the overall picture. See, first, Pranav, you mentioned India is at the forefront of technology. Yeah. Give a couple of examples. 40% of the global capability centers are here in India. Now, that is, and they employ close to 2 million people. That is 2 million people really creating wealth for the country. Our services exports, tech exports, are about $200 billion, and all projections are we'll exceed $500 billion. Yeah. You look at India-US space, which was signed when our Prime Minister was there, is on critical and emerging technology, specifically focused on space, where we've seen our private sector players taking a leap, focused on resilience of semiconductor supply chain, which we have seen as part of global diversification. The other one is on STEM talent. So all this are enables of, and similarly in New Jersey last week, our governor announced the new AI policy, a specific person on generative AI. I think wealth creation, entrepreneurship, people-to-people collaboration, and geographical tie-ups. The underlying base is technology. Pranav, anything you want to add?
Yeah, do we have time? Sure. All right. Okay, really quick. I think it's a very, very simple equation, right? Labor in India is cheaper than anywhere in the world, probably close competition to China, which means tech just fundamentally comes at a cheaper cost, right? So the cost for technology transfer is going to facilitate significant margins, right? Which just basically means that every piece of technology that comes out of India stands a better chance to build a more meaningful business out of it than anywhere else in the world. And I think this is going to be the largest catalyst for tech businesses going global in India. Gen AI, I think, while we're a tech first fund, we've spent a fair amount of our time trying to filter out the not so Gen AI businesses from the actual Gen AI businesses, right? I'd like to just take a couple of seconds on this because we've spent a lot of time on Gen AI. My thoughts are that utility businesses in Gen AI, there is no geographical barrier, which means you're competing with early stage businesses that have raised double-digit $1 million, right, in their pre-seed round. But on the infrastructure side, I think Gen AI in India has a serious shot, right? Because the infrastructure that is going to facilitate everything that we use, let's say on Midjourney or GPT or every consumer-facing utility, the infrastructure that powers that is eventually going to be a more sustainable business. So that's the stuff that we're looking forward to evaluating, at least at Merak.
I have just to add 30 seconds on it. So yes, I can try to keep it. Technology obviously plays an important role when we discuss about startups, especially. So, and Austria is a technologically advanced nation. Many people are not aware that this Atal Tunnel Rohtang Pass that is built by one of the Austrian technology, and we have railway signaling technology being used, automotive infrastructure. So when we think about startups, we always think about technology, and it's not just trade. Now the technology is major part of the trade. After this G20 having Startup 20 as a separate session, other than a Business 20 session, so technology actually playing a major role in geopolitical or business or bilateral relationship between countries. But as it helps and supports, and the conversation is now in and around technology. So I think it's obviously not the add-on, but the main part of the question.
Absolutely. So, Greg, last word to you.
Sure.
We've
Last
all
week-
heard, you cannot survive without technology, and you are a personal connection man. So what do you have to say?
So let me just share, and this is a little bit off of technology, but on the personal connection side. Advice that I would give you in less than 60 seconds: if you have no connections with the international community, but you want to make them, I would say contact conferences like this, like Vibrant Gujarat, like other trade missions. Write a conference convener, ask which countries were represented there, see a country where you have an aligned interest with or you'd like to learn more. Ask that conference convener who is their local India contact. Reach out to that local India contact and say, how can myself and my business add value to any of the delegates that attended this conference? Because those are people who are wanting to build intentional relationships with Indian companies, and they're trusting their local contact in India. So if that trust can transfer to you, then they'll open the door to that delegation on your behalf. So a very practical way, I hope, to help you build relationships with the international community.
Back to being human.
Back to being human.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Greg. So thank you so much, panel. I mean, it was wonderful chatting. I hope we have been able to pass on a few interesting ideas, insights that you can carry forward for your startup, your business, your personal connections, and obviously for a better and happy life. Thank you so much for being patient with us. Thank you.